There are wounds that don't show on the skin, but hurt more than any blow. They are invisible wounds, slow to heal, that open when you give yourself to someone who unknowingly begins to drain you. There are no screams, no violence, just an increasingly intense feeling of being exhausted, confused, disconnected from yourself. And the most disconcerting part is that many times this energy doesn't come from enemies, but from the people you love. You might think you can identify when someone is dangerous. You might believe that with enough intuition, you can avoid the toxic, the manipulative, the dark. But what you can't see is what traps you the most. Because there are people who don't seek to destroy you. They just want you to carry what they cannot hold. And they do it so subtly, so unconsciously, that you end up believing you are the problem. Carl Jung dedicated his life to exploring what most people fear to confront, the depths of the soul. He taught that the most dangerous thing is not deliberate evil, but the unintegrated shadow, that part of ourselves that we repress, deny, conceal, and which, by not being acknowledged, seeks to emerge through others, especially through the most sensitive, the most empathetic, the most spiritual, the chosen ones. Because when your soul shines, you not only illuminate paths, you also reveal wounds that others would rather not see. And that's when the danger arises. People who, unknowingly, begin to project their traumas, their emptiness, their pain onto you. They turn you into their mirror, their savior, their imagined enemy. And you start to forget yourself by trying to understand them, heal them, or simply survive near them. This video is not just a psychological analysis. It is a spiritual map to help you recognize the connections that weaken your essence. Today, we will journey together through 6 profoundly harmful profiles that may be close to you or within you, not to judge them, but to shed light on them. Take a deep breath, because what you are about to hear may forever change the way you look at others, and most importantly, the way you look at yourself again. There are people who don't know what they carry, but they carry it all the same. They walk through life with open wounds, unresolved emotions, nameless traumas. And since they can't hold their own pain, they throw it, project it, silently slip it onto others, especially onto those who have an open heart, especially onto you. Carl Jung clearly explained it. Projection is an unconscious mechanism through which we see in others what we don't want to see in ourselves. When someone hasn't made peace with their shadow, their guilt, their frustration, they unknowingly look for a place to deposit it. And that place is often a luminous, compassionate person who doesn't defend themselves. A chosen soul more concerned with understanding than with judging. These people don't hurt you directly. They don't shout at you, hit you, or curse you, but they make you feel responsible for things that aren't yours. They blame you with silence. They manipulate you with their sadness. They make you believe that if they are broken, it's because you did something wrong. And you, with your willing heart, try to repair what you didn't even break. Without realizing it, you start to feel guilty for their anger, their insecurity, their emptiness. You wonder if you said something wrong, if you did something selfish, if you could have been more patient, kinder, more perfect. But it's not perfection they need. What they seek is a container to pour into what they haven't had the courage to face. When an unconscious projector enters your life, little by little they transform you into something you're not. You stop being yourself to become a symbol, the aggressor you never were, the savior you can't be, the culprit of pain you didn't cause. And the most dangerous part is that you end up believing it. The unconscious projector is not a villain. They are a wounded soul that has forgotten how to look within. But that doesn't mean you should carry their shadow. Because every time you absorb their weight, your light dims a little more. And while you try to heal someone who doesn't want to heal, you end up losing yourself. You're not here to be anyone's emotional dumpster. You're not here to hold up someone who refuses to walk. You're here to shine, to grow, to awaken. And that means recognizing when a relationship is draining you, not out of hate, but out of unconsciousness. Sometimes it's not about people attacking you, but about those who never show who they really are. They're there, silent, smiling, saying the right things, doing what's socially accepted. And you, with your receptive soul, draw closer. You trust them. You think you found a safe haven. But without realizing it, you step into a theater, one where everyone is acting, and you become part of the script. Carl Jung called this the persona. It is the mask we wear to adapt to the world, to fit in, to please. It's not bad in itself. We all have one. The problem starts when someone can't take it off, when the mask clings to the face so tightly that there's no difference between the character and the inner truth. And that disconnection, although unseen, is felt. The mask wearer may seem perfect, always correct, always kind, always in control. But behind that disguise, there's a deep disconnection from the soul. There's unexpressed pain, repressed desires, truths that dare not come out. And you sense it. You feel that something is not entirely alive, that everything is too rehearsed, too clean, too artificial. The real danger appears when you start adapting yourself as well. Because for the play to work, all the actors must stay in character. So you begin to soften your emotions, hide your doubts, suppress your impulses, and avoid discomfort. Slowly, you start erasing parts of yourself to maintain the balance of a script you never wrote. Living with someone who lives to appear rather than to be is a lonely experience. There is no room for authenticity, vulnerability, or soul. Everything is image, expectation, protocol. And if you dare to be real, spontaneous, or emotional, you make them uncomfortable because you remind them of what they buried. Jung warned that over-identifying with the persona distances us from the process of individuation, that sacred path towards self-knowledge and integration of being, because those who live to please the outside world end up disconnected from their inner self, and those who relate to such people also risk forgetting who they truly are. Maybe you don't wear a mask, but you've gotten used to living with those who do. You do it for peace, for love, to avoid conflict, but that peace is false. It's a silence that weighs heavy, a calm that suffocates. You deserve more than a well-lit stage. You deserve depth. You deserve truth. You deserve to be yourself without disguises. Not everything dark screens. Not everything dangerous attacks. Some shadows hide behind silence, self-control, and perfection. And you, with your open soul, can sense without knowing how to explain it. You feel that something doesn't quite fit, even when everything seems in order. Those people who always present themselves as strong, balanced, unbreakable, often carry a storm they refuse to feel. And that storm, sooner or later, erupts. And you, being close, are the one who gets caught in it. Carl Jung explained it clearly. The shadow is everything the individual refuses to acknowledge about themselves. It's not the evil of others. It's not the external enemy. It's the anger you disguise with a smile. It's the desire you judge. It's the resentment you rationalize. It's everything you push into the basement of your soul, hoping it will disappear, but it never goes away. The guardian of their shadow is not violent. They rarely explode. In fact, you rarely see them lose control. But that doesn't mean there is peace within them. It means they have learned to bury their pain so deeply that they can no longer distinguish between what they feel and what they think they should feel. They live trapped between a rigid morality and a constant need to appear upright. This type of person is often admired. They are disciplined, helpful, steadfast. But there is something cold about their presence. Something uncomfortable when you show vulnerability, when you cry, when you make mistakes. Because anything that reminds them of their repressed side is unbearable. They don't allow it. And therefore, they don't allow you to either. And you, being one of the chosen, someone who feels deeply, who vibrates with authenticity, start to shrink. You correct yourself. You stay quiet. You avoid conflict. Because you sense that this person doesn't know how to handle spontaneity, reality, or emotion. Little by little, you stop showing who you are. You shape yourself, adapt, and monitor your behavior. And without realizing it, you also begin to repress your own light so as not to disturb their darkness. But when that repressed shadow can no longer be contained, it bursts forward with devastating force. And that's when you see it: disproportionate reactions, hurtful words, sudden distances, outbursts of resentment or coldness that you don't understand because you were just being yourself. Yet still, you blame yourself. You wonder if you said something wrong, if you were too intense, too honest, too much yourself. Jung warned us, the stronger the mask, the more dangerous the shadow. And when that shadow finally emerges, it sweeps away whatever is nearby, sometimes with shouting, sometimes with silent punishment. And without knowing it, you've spent all that time living next to an emotional landmine, believing it was solid ground. You're not here to censor yourself. You're here to live with your soul uncovered. And that means recognizing when someone isn't ready to receive you because they haven't even allowed themselves to receive their deepest truth. Likewise, there are people who don't shout, but judge with their eyes, who don't hit you, but make you feel guilty just for existing. They don't wield swords, they wield rules. They don't throw stones, they repeat phrases like "this is wrong" or "that's not godly." They present themselves as guardians of morality, as messengers of what's right, as defenders of the sacred. But inside, they're running from themselves. They are the spiritual moralists, those who judge to avoid looking within. Carl Jung described them as those who project their own shadow onto the behavior of others. In other words, people who have not integrated their desires, their anger, their fear, their impulses, and instead of taking responsibility, they see them reflected in others. They criticize what they themselves haven't healed. They condemn what they secretly fear to recognize within their own soul. And you, who came into this world with deep sensitivity, with a pure energy, with an honest desire to walk in truth, end up being their easiest target. Because your light makes them uncomfortable. Your authenticity confronts them. Your freedom destabilizes them. And because they can't allow themselves to be like you, they seek to correct you, contain you, diminish you. They enclose you in an invisible prison made of guilt. They tell you that what you feel is wrong, that you must control yourself, that you shouldn't think that way, that your way of being doesn't fit in. And they do it with a kind smile, a biblical quote, a phrase, for your own good. But behind it all, there's only fear. Fear of losing control. Fear that emotional truth will dismantle the structure on which they built their identity. In that environment, you start to shrink, to avoid showing your human side, to feel ashamed of what's natural, spontaneous, different. And without realizing it, you begin to betray yourself. You start molding yourself to please someone who believes they are a judge when, in reality, they've never learned to be a witness to themselves. Jung said that the more moralistic a person is, the more disconnected they are from their soul. Because those who have truly faced their shadow don't need to condemn yours. On the contrary, they recognize it, honor it, and accompany you in healing it without imposing. But the spiritual moralist doesn't seek healing. They want obedience. They're not after truth, they're after control. Many chosen ones grew up in environments like this. Families where being free was synonymous with being rebellious. Churches where feeling was a sin. Homes where individuality was punished as selfishness. And today, they still carry those voices in their minds. Voices that aren't theirs. Voices that didn't come from the soul, but from fear disguised as virtue. Today, it's time to break those chains. To return the guilt that doesn't belong to you. To understand that your spiritual path is not about obeying someone else's dogma, but about listening to the divine voice that lives within you. But the moralist is not the only one acting unconsciously. There are people who don't seek to control you, but drag you along whenever they break inside. They don't openly judge you, but they react from such deep, wounded places that they end up making you feel responsible for emotions they themselves don't understand. They are fragmented souls, trapped in their past, living among emotional ruins they haven't been able to rebuild. They are slaves to their complexes. Carl Jung described complexes as autonomous clusters of emotion and memory, unconscious fragments that activate without warning, making a person react as if the present were a threat when it's merely a repetition of the past. And that's where relationships with them become dangerous. Not because they want to, but because it's no longer them who respond, it's their wounds. You're with them, and everything seems fine. There's love, affection, understanding. But suddenly, something breaks. A word misunderstood, a misplaced silence, an emotion that wasn't reciprocated, and chaos appears. They accuse you. They punish you. They shut down. They distance themselves. They make you feel as if you did something unforgivable, when, in reality, all you did was trigger an old memory that was never healed. And you, with your empathetic energy, try to understand. You wonder what you did wrong. You try to correct yourself. You walk carefully, measuring every word, every gesture, every silence, because you know that at any moment, that disguised fragility can turn into a storm. You start living on alert, always anticipating, always holding back, always giving in. But here's the truth: that pain they carry, you didn't cause it. That abandonment, that rejection, that emptiness, it's not your responsibility to fill it. You just became the mirror reflecting a wound that has long been waiting to be seen. And although it's not intentional, what this person needs is not your sacrifice, but their own healing. The problem is that sometimes the moments of love are real. Sometimes the connection is sincere. But what keeps breaking everything is what's buried and still rules their soul. And if you're not careful, if you don't learn to set boundaries, you'll end up shaping yourself so much to avoid conflict that you disappear within their story. Jung said that complexes don't just interfere, they colonize the psyche. The person stops being themselves. They speak from their wound. They love from fear. They fight from loss. And without realizing it, they contaminate every relationship with those unprocessed emotions. And you, who just wanted to love peacefully, end up walking in circles within a past that's not yours. And just when you think you've learned to set boundaries, when you believe you can spot emotional chaos, a different kind of relationship appears. Quieter, subtler, but just as destructive. It doesn't explode. It doesn't accuse. It doesn't dramatize. It just absorbs, little by little, day by day, drop by drop, until you feel drained, empty, disconnected from yourself. You're facing a psychic vampire. Someone who doesn't want to be with you. They want to feed on your energy. These people don't attack you. On the contrary, they often present themselves as eternal victims. They speak from pain, from need, from fragility. And you, with that compassionate heart of yours, open your soul. You listen to them. You support them. You hold them up. But the more you give, the more they ask for. And nothing is ever enough. Carl Jung spoke of symbiotic relationships as one of the greatest threats to the soul's development. Relationships where there are no longer two individuals, but a blur of boundaries, where the other clings to you not out of love, but out of dependence, because they don't know how to stand on their own, because they fear their own emptiness, and they make you their support without asking whether you also need support. The psychic vampire presents themselves as someone who just seeks understanding. But behind that mask, there is a constant demand. They need your attention, your validation, your presence. They can't be alone. They can't sit in silence. They can't look inward. So you become their refuge, but also their fuel. And without realizing it, you start to disappear into their need. At first, you don't notice it. But over time, something changes within you. You feel tired after every conversation. Emotionally drained. You feel like you can't think clearly, like you can't hear yourself. You don't know whether what you're feeling is yours, or if you absorbed it from them. Because the psychic vampire doesn't invade with violence, but with need. And that kind of invasion is the most dangerous, because it looks like love. They make you feel guilty for wanting space, selfish for needing silence, cold for setting boundaries. They reinterpret your distance as abandonment. Your need for peace is indifference. And so you start giving in again and again, out of compassion, out of love, to avoid hurting them, until you realize you are living to avoid a crisis and not to be happy. Jung said that a soul that doesn't know how to support itself seeks to cling to another to avoid falling. But that union is not love, it's escape. And when you become someone's escape, you turn into a container for a wound you cannot heal. You try, you make an effort, but nothing changes because it's not your emptiness you're trying to fill, it's someone else's. After walking through these 6 phases of the unconscious, it's natural to feel a mix of relief, pain, and revelation. Because now you see what you couldn't name before. Because many of the wounds you carried weren't yours, but you had made them your own. Because many of the bonds you maintained were held together by guilt, duty, or misplaced compassion. But today, something within you has awakened. Carl Jung put it plainly, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And that fate, for many chosen souls, has been carrying other people's energies, borrowed traumas, and projections that were never truly theirs. But the time has come to break that cycle, to release the guilt that doesn't belong to you, to return to your center, to your truth, to your sacred energy. Being chosen doesn't mean carrying everyone. It means discerning. It means protecting your light without closing your heart. It means knowing when to give and when to step back, when to accompany, and when to say, enough. Not out of harshness, but from self-love, from respect for your soul. Perhaps you realize that you've lived with an unconscious projector. Perhaps you recognize a mask of someone close to you. Perhaps you felt that you were the one who got lost in the role of savior, victim, or eternal support. Don't punish yourself for that. We all have a shadow. At some point, we have all projected, drained, or run away from ourselves. The difference lies in what you do with this truth, whether you use it to free yourself or to keep justifying the pain. Today, you have the opportunity to choose differently, to observe yourself with more compassion, to clean up your connections, to put words where there was only exhaustion, to return to yourself not as someone going back to the familiar, but as someone waking up from a long sleep. Your energy is sacred. Your presence transforms spaces. Your light makes those who still live in the shadows uncomfortable, and that's okay. You didn't come here to be understood by everyone. You came to remember who you are and to live from that place. Now take a deep breath, feel your body, sense your soul, and ask yourself just one question. Is what I'm feeling truly mine, or did I absorb it out of love? That question can mark the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where you no longer need to prove anything, where you don't carry what doesn't belong to you, where your peace is non-negotiable, where your life stops being an extension of others' pain and becomes, finally, the sacred space where you too can heal. Let me know in the comments which of these profiles resonated most with you and whether you felt any of them living within you. Perhaps your voice will be the reflection someone else needs to wake up. And if this message touched something within you, if you felt your soul being seen, I invite you to subscribe. This channel is created for souls like yours who no longer want to merely survive, but to live with awareness, truth, and purpose. Thank you for being here. And remember, when you make conscious what once ruled you, you come home. Let me know in the comments which of these profiles resonated most with you and whether you felt any of them within yourself. Perhaps your voice will be the reflection someone else needs to awaken.